welcome to the 2021 International eConference on the Historical Jesus. Now, today's theme, with the exception of a couple of presentations, is all about a discussion on what's known as Jesus mythicism. My name is Dr. Darren Slade, and I'm the president of the Global Center for Religious Research, which is hosting this year's academic conference. And one of the great things about GCRR is that you're being joined by students and scholars and specialists from all over the world, right from the comfort and safety of your own home. I want to remind everybody that there is a downloadable PDF file that was created specially for you and this conference by the Scholars Choice Organization. So 4 separate book publishers, including Baker Academic and SBL Press, have given each of you a special discount code up to 40% off to use on books related to the historical Jesus. So all you have to do is go back to the GCRR website, go back to the Historical Jesus event webpage, and click on the Scholars Choice logo that's near the top of that webpage, and you'll be able to download the PDF. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Global Center for Religious Research has established the most comprehensive international research group to study the causes, manifestations, and treatment options for those suffering from religious trauma. The GCRR has built a team of approximately 30 licensed psychiatrists, therapists, sociologists, university researchers, religion scholars, and PhD candidates from all over the world, most of whom specialize in the field of trauma research. But we have a really big problem. See, in order for victims of religious trauma to receive help, we need to arrive at a place in our culture where religious trauma is accepted as a real mental health condition. And unfortunately, the academic study of religious trauma remains in its infancy when compared to other studies in mental health. That means there are no exhaustive empirical studies to support what we've all experienced in the tens of thousands, that religious trauma exists and is a chronic problem in many religious traditions. So as it stands, really only anecdotal case studies have been published, but nothing substantially empirical. And GCRR intends to correct this gap of knowledge by offering an interdisciplinary and scientific examination of religious trauma. And we're hoping to get your help in supporting this project. We've set up a GoFundMe page in order to crowdsource the world's very first comprehensive sociological study on those traumatized by religion in order to help set the stage, the foundational data from which other researchers and counselors can build on in order to get people who suffer from trauma the help that they need. The reason we've set up a GoFundMe is because, unfortunately, all federal funding to mental health research has come to a screeching halt. And so that's why we've turned to the public for help. All you have to do is go to GoFundMe.com and search the phrase religious trauma sociological study, or you can click on the link that I'll put in the chat box here shortly. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to my very good friend and our next presenter, Tim Freke, and allow me to share my screen so I can present him properly. So Timothy Freke is going to be talking today on the Jesus parable. Now, this is a man that doesn't need much of an introduction. As many of you know, Timothy Freke is an English philosopher and author of 35 books, translated into 15 different languages. In fact, the Jesus Mysteries, which he co-authored with Peter Gandy and was published in 1999, was a top 10 bestseller in the UK Sunday Times. It was Book of the Year in the UK Daily Telegraph and the official Amazon surprise bestseller. Timothy is one of the 100 most spiritually influential living people on the 2021 list in Watkins Magazine and is the winner of Author of the Year 2020 in Kindred Spirit Magazine. So a number of his books can be found at his personal website, which is www.timfreke.com. That's spelled TIMFREKE.com. And some of those books include The Jesus Mysteries, Jesus and the Goddess, The Secret Teachings of the Original Christians, The Laughing Jesus, Religious Lies and Gnostic Wisdom, and The Gospel of the Second Coming. Jesus is back, and this time he's funny. With that said, I will turn it over to you, Tim, thank you so much for being here. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, everyone. Whatever time of day it is for you, wherever you are, it's lovely to see your faces. So the Jesus Mysteries, with the subtitle, Was the Original Jesus a Pagan God? I wrote that and published that in 1999, like Darren said, with my dear friend and colleague, Peter Gandy. And when we did that, we felt very lonely because we didn't know anyone who was thinking about these ideas at all. We found a few eventually, like the great George Wells, for instance, who was doing it before us and so forth. And it goes back and back and back. But we didn't know anything about that. And in the mainstream culture, there was nothing really that we could find. And it's very, it's kind of exciting to be here at a conference 20 something years later with all of these different speakers. Many of whom are exploring different versions of the sort of insights that when we first had them, to be honest with you, felt utterly outrageous. I mean, it felt like, can you even think these thoughts? I think the chapter actually in the book, and one of the first chapters, as I remember, is called The Unthinkable Thought. The thought that we completely misunderstood the history of the most influential religion, I'm guessing, in the whole of history, certainly one of them. But that's the conclusion we came to. So I want to start really this presentation with a confession to you, so we're all straight with each other right from the start, which is I have moved on from my studies in this area quite some time ago, and I haven't kept up with all of the developments and all of these amazing people you've got speaking and all of the books that have come out since. Because I felt other things were calling me, and I was kind of done with Jesus, and we'd done the work we needed to do. So I can't comment on any of that much, really. And what I said when Darren invited me, I thought it was such a great conference. I love the organization. I wanted to support what they were doing. And I said, well, look, I can speak about the intensive research we did 20 something years ago and why it seems so compelling. And that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully we'll have a chance to chat as well. And you can ask me whatever the hell you want, to be honest, anything. Let this is the whole point of getting together. And it's obviously, we can do it now online, is to ask questions and search for answers. So I'm going to usually, as those of you who know me, I'm relentlessly ambitious, and so I'm going to cover far too much, far too quickly, but that's what I want to try and do. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of history, some philosophy, and then I'm going to talk about mythology. And I called this presentation, I thought afterwards, I should have called it the Jesus Mysteries, because that's the thing that people know me for, but I'm not sensible enough to do that. So I called it the Jesus Parable, and I did that because over the years, it's felt a great way to introduce the ideas that I'm exploring is to say this. If I was coming to this conference and I said to you, look, you know, we've been doing this immense amount of research and I've got something to share with you. It was a bit shocking, which is that you know the story of the Good Samaritan. You know that story that you've been told since you were little at school? There is no Good Samaritan. There just isn't. It's just made up. There is no Good Samaritan. It didn't happen. I know, it looks like it did, and you've been told it, but it didn't happen. Now, if I did that, and when I have done that, everyone goes, well, obviously there's no Good Samaritan. It's a parable, for heaven's sake. It's a teaching story. Of course there's no Good Samaritan. Don't be daft. No one thinks there's a Good Samaritan. Not even Christian fundamentalists think there really was a Good Samaritan, necessarily. It's a teaching story. The point is, do you understand the lesson of the story? So the essential message in the Jesus Mysteries, and that I want to share with you today, is that the whole of the gospel story is a parable. The whole thing's a parable. And to look for a real Jesus is as crazy as looking for a real Good Samaritan, because you completely, or if we do that, we completely missed the point. And to be able to get there, we need to put ourselves, and this is not an easy thing to do, I don't think. It really isn't. We need to put ourselves as best we can back into the ancient mindset 2,000 years ago and more. And to try and understand how they were thinking and how they thought they saw these things that we call myths. Because when I say something's a myth, people in the modern world often think that means I'm saying it's not true. Because we've differentiated the idea of history and mythology into two distinct categories, which in the ancient world is just not the case. So we need to think in a different way if we're going to see what this is that we've inherited and how we've come to misunderstand its nature. And to indeed appreciate its true nature, which I think is actually quite beautiful in many respects. So for us, it started, and I'm sure there's lots of speakers who are going to cover this ground, so I'm not going to go into it in a huge amount of detail. It's quite well known now that there are these incredible similarities between myths in the pagan tradition, in all of these different, what were called mystery religions or mystery schools. And these little cults, but I don't mean cults in a negative sense, I mean in the literal sense that was used in the ancient world. These ancient religions were taken very seriously by some of the greatest minds of their time. The great philosophers were often initiates in these mystery religions. And so we should understand they had real depth to them. And what you find is that they at their center, there are various myths, in particular, ones that concern a dying and resurrecting God-man or a son of God, who goes by all sorts of different names in all of these different cultures around the Mediterranean. Adonis, Attis, Serapis, Osiris, going back to ancient Egypt, Dionysus in Greece, and so forth. When we started coming across these similarities, it felt like, well, this has to be with the Jesus story. How can that be explained? And just to give you a taste of them, I'm sure you know them. The key one is the death and resurrection in various ways, sometimes through death through crucifixion. We have a picture on, I can probably show it to you if you don't know it. There's a picture on the front cover of our book, The Jesus Mysteries, which shows a figure on a cross. This is an amulet. This is an artist's reconstruction, actually, of an amulet that was lost in Berlin in the war. We don't know its date. It doesn't prove anything. But it's interesting that you've got a figure who isn't Jesus on a cross. I just want to say that actually generally as we go into this, none of these similarities, of which there are a huge number, you can look at the work in the Jesus Mysteries to see that, no single one of them proves anything. And things like the amulet, you know, it could be later, it could be earlier, there could be all sorts of reasons for it. For me, the thing which convinces me of what I'm going to share with you is how it all fits together. And any one piece could be mistaken, and I'm sure plenty of people have pointed out mistakes that we made. I'm sure we did. But it's how things fit together that gives something real strength as a theory, I believe. So the Jesus Mysteries thesis, as we called it, is about how all of this holds together. So you've got a God-man, he dies, he resurrects, he's born of a virgin, sometimes in a cave. He has 12 disciples, he brings a new religion, he turns water into wine at a wedding, and right up to the death and resurrection. You celebrate celebrate him by drinking wine and eating bread, and so on. So once you see these, and it's worth pointing out right as well, this is unfamiliar to us today, but these similarities between the Jesus story and the pagan mythology was not obviously unfamiliar to the ancients. So you've got early Christian church fathers, as they're called, like Justin Martyr and Tertullian, who are quite aware of the similarities between the Jesus story and these ancient pagan myths. In fact, they make a point of it. They defend Christianity by saying, look, we're telling the same stories, which is interesting. And then you get this idea that somehow when they want to make it, they want to historicize it, that the big thing is that now the story has been made real. It has actually happened. The story has actually happened. But the fact that the similarities were acknowledged right very early on, because they're obvious. So once you see that, I think there's two rational options. And like most people, we took the first option, which is obviously there must be an historical man, because that's too big a thought to think that he didn't exist. And over the top of him is laid all this mythology. You know, like he wasn't really born on Christmas Day. That's a solstice event, and that's been laid on top of him later, or died at Easter, all of that. That's all, like churches get built on top of ancient pagan temples. It's just been laid on top. That's the first option. And it's a perfectly viable option, but I think it's wrong. And I think it's wrong because of two things. One is, I don't think there's any substantial evidence at all for an historical man. Now, that shouldn't surprise us. If there was an historical man, he wasn't a very big historical figure when he lived, and it would be no surprise that there was nothing left. But what we do have is faith documents. The Gospels are mythological faith documents. They're not historical documents. I don't think there's many scholars who think that they were anything else. The stories have obviously been altered and changed over time. It's now well known that of the four that we have in the New Testament, 3 of them are basically the same one in different versions. All of which points to, all of which is no proof for a historical man. And where there is proof, like the quote in the Jewish historian Josephus, which is wheeled out on a regular basis as, look, I think it's such a crude forgery that what it speaks to is actually the lack of evidence that was being found in later centuries. And so that somebody had to insert something to save the blushes of the church. So there's two things there. One is, look, this story, now just to be clear, again, I don't want to waste your time with things that most people here already know, but it's not like the story of Dionysus or something is the same as the story of Jesus. There is no myth which is the same as the Jesus myth. It's more that they share the same motifs. And the way that I think about this is to think about modern science fiction. If you go and see Star Wars and you know your science fiction, you could probably piece together, oh, he's taken that from there, or the Matrix or something. Oh, that's come from there. That's a twist on that. And they created something new. And we go, that's great. It's something new and we love it. I think we need to see human creativity in the same sort of way, but in the ancient world, they're doing it with these myths, so that it's not like they're stealing. It's not like some sort of bad sort of plagiarism. And it's not like they're just copying. It's a creative process, which is bringing together motifs. And in the Jesus story, as we'll see in a minute, not just motifs from the pagan world, but also from the Jewish world as well. And integrating it into what turned out to be a fabulous and incredibly influential story with a real new twist to it, which is why we're still talking about it. Although I do often think it's a quirk of fate, in a way, perhaps, that if Constantine's mother had not been a Christian, but been a Mithraic follower of Mithras, we might all be here going, do you think there was a real Mithras? But none of us even think that for a moment, because we've come through a different history. So that's the first reason. And the first two things, there's similarities with pagan myths, no evidence for an historical man. And then I think the really important element for me is the existence of the Gnostic Christians. So the Gnostic Christians, there was no Christians that called themselves Gnostics. This is all retrospected onto them, a vast, diverse group of different Christian cults. And to differentiate them, I think of them as Gnostics, and then there's this other version of Christianity, which I call literalists. And that's the literalists who are going, this is history. Jesus really came, he lived out this miraculous story, he really resurrected from the dead, and if you believe in that, then heaven awaits for you. And if you don't, then look out. You're going to be tortured forever by a God of love. Now, what I see with the Gnostics is something different. We've inherited a view of the Gnostics that come from the Roman Church, which pretty much obliterated the Gnostics and continued to do that over the centuries. They were still doing it with the Cathars and the Bogomils, and it's a bloody history. But the winner's white history, of course, and it doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. So the thesis that we're exploring is, what if the Gnostics are not this kind of sect that the Roman Church has painted them to be, this wayward, not this sect that kind of lost the way and went pagan? What if it's the other way around? What if the Gnostics are the original Christians? And it's the literalists who are the heretics later. And I think all the evidence points strongly in that direction, because there's just so many Gnostic groups. I mean, we have Tertullian again saying that the followers of Marcion, one of the Gnostic teachers, fill the whole universe. That's a lot. I don't know what he means by that, but it's obviously he thinks there's a lot. Or Polycarp, the Epistle of Polycarp, that says the great majority of Christians follow the Gnostic belief, and this is the key Gnostic belief, that Jesus did not come in the flesh. Oh, so here's a group of Christians who fill the whole universe, and the great majority of them do not believe that Jesus existed in the flesh. We also know that figures like Simon Magus are very early. So the possibility is here, oh, these are the actual Christians, and they know it's a myth because they've created it as a myth. Whole diverse groups of them in all sorts of different, it's a bit like today in the New Age or something. Some are aesthetics and living in the desert. Others are practicing free love and proto-communism. Some are clearly Pythagoreans. It's all going on, I think. All sorts of different things are going on. That seems unlikely if there's one man who started it all. So I suggest that's not the case. Let me share with you how it may have come about, which is, well, firstly, I don't think it's anything to do with it happening in Judea. I think the most likely place for all of this is in Alexandria, where there's a very large Jewish population. They're integrated into the Hellenic world. They're all speaking Greek. All of the Gospels are written in Greek. By the way, in case you don't know, there aren't just 4, there are lots. And when you look at all these other Gospels, suddenly these look quite different. It's only by isolating these 4 that they look like history. Once you put them into to the pot with everything else, you're clearly dealing with mythology. So I think probably Alexandria is the place. You've got a group like the Therapeutai living outside Alexandria. Philo Judaeus, Philo the Jew, tells us about them. He's a Jewish leader. He's also called Philo the Pythagorean. So here's a Jew who's a Pythagorean. Pythagoras is the Buddha of the Western world, I've heard him called. I think that's a good name for him. That's his status, really. And this group, the Therapeutai, look like they're practicing Pythagoreans, but they're Jews. And they seem to be practicing a mystery school based around Exodus. Now, as I'm going to go into in a minute, these myths are not just stories. They're initiation allegories. They're parables with very, very deep messages. So they understood that the reason we call them the Gnostics is because they regard the aim of all of this as gnosis, Greek for knowledge, and it's mystical knowledge. It's knowledge of the self or knowledge of God. That's what it's all about for them, an experience of gnosis. In the mysteries of Moses, it looks like they understand Exodus as an allegory for that process, whereby you're lost in the desert with Moses. Moses is the initiator. He leads you, and you end up eventually in the promised land, and the promised land represents gnosis, and they've got all sorts of understandings of what that means. But what's interesting about that, if you remember your Old Testament, is that Moses dies. It's not Moses who leads the Jewish people to the promised land. It's Joshua. And Joshua in Greek becomes Jesus. So that I suspect Jewish Pythagoreans have been practicing the mysteries of Joshua or Jesus possibly for a very long time, way before any imaginary year zero. And they're developing, what they're doing is what we do today still. They are integrating their own mythology with the mythology of this incredible pagan culture they exist within in Egypt, which is not just the old Egyptian culture, it's also all the Greek culture as well. I mean, this is high culture. They want in, they're taking it in. And what they do is they take Joshua and transform him into the pagan dying and resurrecting God-man, and they create what has become for us the Jesus story. One of the things that was outstanding for us with all of this, or really bugged me when we were working on this, was what about Paul? You know, Paul's the earliest writings we have, and he attacks the Gnostics. So if the Gnostics really were the original Christians, that doesn't make any sense. And I just want to point you, if you're interested in that, it's in our books, but I recommend Elaine Pagel's book, The Gnostic Paul, because when we discovered it, and it was kind of a discovery, it just blew my mind. Because here was Elaine Pagels, who does fantastic work, saying, oh yeah, no, the Gnostics regarded Paul as the great apostle. He was the man for them. You know, they can trace their lineage to him. Some of them do. Valentinus does, for instance, through Theudas to Paul. And the scholars have, of course, other scholars, mainstream scholars, have for a long time been going, look, there's early letters of Paul, and then there's other letters which are way later, not written by Paul, they've been added later. And those are the ones where you get all of this anti-Gnostic rhetoric, because they're trying to claim Paul as a literalist, transform Paul, because the actual authentic Paul is writing in the Greek of the ancient mysteries and sounds like he was an initiate of other mystery schools as well as the Jesus mysteries. So I think that's what's happened. And then it's been added to, changed, fallen into the hands of people with political motives. You know, there's a whole, you know, there's a complex history that will never unweave, which has got us to where we are today. And it's still going on, of course. That's what happens with ideas. But what I want to do with the time I've got here is I want to try and share with you why I think this mattered to people. Because there is something very, very deep in these ancient stories, which is not just to be dismissed, I don't think. It's not like a silly story. It's more than that. There's a significance to it, which we can easily miss. So the options taking on Christianity, and I quote a little bit of the last conversations, you know, the option isn't, it's just stupid, help people get out of it, or you're just in and believe the whole thing. There's actually there's lots of options, but this is one, which is to go, actually, there's something deep in here. One of the things we did, which probably led us to, got us into some trouble, really, it meant that we weren't embraced by people who might have otherwise done so, was that we dedicated the Jesus mysteries to the Christ in you. Because we didn't want to rubbish Christ.